Hi friends, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today on John's Briefs, here with my friend Tim Forshey, who has spent a good bit of time, 15 years, as a judge.
Yeah.
And a substitute teacher judge, he is his word.
Judge pro tem, that's what
Judge pro tem, but there's been several instances in the national kind of consciousness recently with the Rittenhouse case, with the McMichaels juries, with the Chauvin jury, that people have talked about judicial bias and a judge determining outcomes. And I want to talk to Tim today about how a judge has to work to be impartial and what the role of a judge in a trial is. Firearms Legal Protection is who I trust to help me after a use of force incident. If you're a Firearms Legal Protection member, you can attend our monthly Active Self-Protection training seminars for free. Check out all they offer to their members at the link below. So Tim, I think that, again, you've got unique experience here, right? Firearms instructor, pro-Second Amendment guy, defense attorney, prosecuting attorney, and judge. So you've kind of sat on every seat in the bus on this one.
Well, because I can't keep a seat, apparently. Yeah.
But, okay, so as a judge, I think, people watched Judge Schrader run his courtroom in the Rittenhouse case, and that was obviously broadcast on national television. He was a character, for sure, definitely, but from everything I've read about him, that's right down the line of what he always does in his courtroom. I've always kind of viewed the role of the judge as the baseball umpire, that he or she calls balls and strikes and keeps everybody playing the game by the rules. Right. Is that a good way to look at it?
That's a good analogy. Yeah, it's the problem with that analogy is that when an umpire calls a ball or a strike, that's that.
Right.
When a judge makes a ruling, there's an appellate court above him, there's a Supreme Court above that, there's a lot of second guessing going on. And of course, when you call a ball or a strike in a baseball game, you're not basically...
Someone's life's not at stake.
Freedom.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Well, and listen, I mean, even it's baseball season right now, right? I'm a baseball fan, and now we have electronic strike zones, replays, those things, and now you can see, dude, that pitch was 3 inches off the plate, and he called it a strike. What was he doing? And it's causing an uproar in umpiring, and so again, there's kind of that judicial review in some sense now.
The good news is that judges have what's called, it's a term that we use a lot, and a lot of people don't understand what it means, judicial discretion. And what that means is it's kind of like I've got a 3 MOA rifle. As long as it hits within that 3 MOA, that's a good enough shot, right? So we give the judge some discretion. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have ruled that way, but that's not beyond the scope of discretion. That's within the reasonableness standard.
Reasonableness. And we still expect judges to be reasonable.
Exactly. So that helps a lot as a judge. But yeah, I mean, especially in front of a jury, it's very important because you're influencing people that know nothing about the system.
Right.
If it's a bench trial and there's just lawyers there, it's a whole different can of worms. I've tried lots of bench trials, and it takes a lot of pressure off the judge because even though I'm making the decision, I kind of get it, and I know that all the people there kind of get it.
Right.
When you got people that are missing, a day's work or a week's work or a month's work, it's a whole different situation, or in some cases even longer than that. It's a whole different situation, and basically what you're doing is it's almost like I would view it this way. You ever played bowling with somebody who's a really bad bowler, and they put those things in the
yeah, I'm the bad bowler,
and they put those pads in the gutters.
Yeah. The bumpers?
That's the judge is supposed to try to keep things in play.
Okay.
Right? And if it's starting to get weird, you dismiss the jury, then you have a conversation and not in the jury's presence. It's amazing. As a lawyer, as a judge, it is amazing the information that juries don't get during trial.
Sure.
I had a case one time where my client had shot somebody in a road, let's call it a road rage situation. Thankfully, didn't kill him, blew his jaw off with a 10 millimeter. And I was able to keep from the jury that he'd been involved in two prior shootings where he'd killed people.
Wow.
If the jury had heard that,
it would have been a big deal.
Now, of course, I can't imagine I would have got the acquittal that I got. Right?
It's reasonable to keep that from there because it's not about...
It wasn't about that incident, but it did show mindset.
Federal Rules of Evidence 404, we've talked about that.
Look, it's nice to have conversations so I know so much.
I'm not going to law school. Not going to be an attorney.
But again, there's a lot of judicial discretion that we tend to give a pretty wide berth, right? So, but then you do see judges, and I'm old, so you go back to the wonderful Lance Ito performance during OJ.
Yeah.
Unbelievable media scrutiny. We probably haven't seen anything since that, maybe never will again. And I think Judge Ito was unable to resist the allure of becoming a player. It was, to some degree, it became about him. Jay Leno was doing the dancing Itos every night on TV, et cetera, et cetera. Judges don't like that. I don't want to be on camera. I don't ever want to be part of the story. I'm the referee. right? And like, your umpire allegory. I mean, the umpire shouldn't be talked about much during a game if the game's being played properly.
Yeah, if the game's being played properly, then and the umps just calling balls and strikes, you know what I mean? Then
they're
hey,
kind of in the background.
Yeah, they're kind of in the background.
When you get that game-winning slide at home plate,
it was so close.
Really important.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that's something that I don't relish as a judge.
And how do you work then? I mean, okay, you have a judicial standard, right? And so that 3 MOA, like it's reasonable here, and supervision over you. So, I mean, you probably kind of know, like, look, if I do something stupid here, it's going to get overturned on appeal anyways.
Well, not only that, but as a judge pro tem, I'll get fired.
Yeah, you'll get fired.
I'm not elected into office or anything. So yeah, if you try to do what we call judicial activism, well, by God, I'm going to make you go out and scrape graffiti off the walls. That's my sentence.
Right.
Your boss is going to go, what are you doing?
What are you doing? You're fired. Get out of here.
Yeah. So you don't have this freedom that a lot of people think you have. I think you see that in small rural counties where the judge is the presiding judge, and everybody knows that old Judge Miller can kind of get away with stuff. But in a large city where there's multiple layers of supervisors above you, you can't do that stuff.
So then how as the judge do you then set your own self to say, I have to be very careful to be impartial here? How do you go about that?
Well, I have triplet daughters, so that helped me a lot. Right? I mean,
because you're always wrong.
I'm always wrong, number one.
Especially when they're teenagers.
They're always right. But also just trying to arbitrate differences and try to be fair to people. I mean, if I'm always favoring this daughter, then the other two are going to gang up on me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that sounds corny, but I think that's one way that sort of helped, is just basically mediating differences for people. And don't forget, if you're a litigator lawyer, there's a lot of lawyers that are transactional lawyers or stuff that are way smarter than me to make a lot more money. I'm a litigator, and that's the nature of the job. It's always a matter of resolving arguments.
Litigator means trial attorney, right? Transactional lawyer means that they're sending letters to other lawyers to get people to pay each other money for things.
Making lots more dough.
Yeah, okay.
But so the nature of the beast there is you're always dealing with arguments, and you've got to either win or lose, or oftentimes try to come up with some sort of compromise. So I think a judge has an innate sense of that, generally speaking. You try to get the right result, but it's not always possible.
Now, as a guy who has sat in both the defense attorney's seat and the prosecuting attorney's seat, do you feel like, in your experience, now again, we hear about stuff and see things that make the national news. We hear about and see things that are egregious.
Right.
Now, not as a judge pro tem, because you're like, oh, that's like asking a cop, are cops fair? Well, as a defense attorney and a prosecuting attorney, are most of the judges whose courtrooms you go into treating you fairly?
I would have to say yes. I mean, we always do background checks on the judge, and we find out what their background is. Were they a prosecutor? Were they a defense attorney? Were they in the military? What college did they go to? Are they involved in politics locally? To try to get an idea.
Right.
But, I mean, it's just like jury selection.
You get who you get.
This guy's a member of the NRA, so he's going to be pro-gun. I want him on my panel, and he's the absolute worst person I could have ever picked because he's very staunch about gun safety, et cetera. I kind of gave up on trying to predict behavior years ago. So you could have a judge who you would say is a far left-leaning judge who could be the best judge I've ever had. I know an example of that personally. So
well, and listen, here in Arizona, I don't know about what state you're in, but when it comes to for judicial election, there's a review process that you can look at online that says, they ask every attorney who comes into that judge's courtroom anonymously, what did you think of that judge's fairness? What did you think of that judge's acumen? What did you think of their legal knowledge? And I will tell you that in my voting, it's pretty clear if you've got a judge that's not doing their job well.
It's in the entire history of Maricopa County, there's only been one judge not retained. Remember, judges aren't elected here; they're appointed by the government.
They're appointed.
And it's in Maricopa County and Pima County. And the other counties are elected, weirdly enough. And that's for retention, judicial retention.
Right.
And I mean, it's
very rare.
Kind of meaningless, frankly. Yeah. But yes, we do that, and you do look at the numbers, and it's sort of amazing how, when I look at those numbers when they're published, it mirrors my own experience. It's like, that wasn't my favorite judge. Oh, he's only got a 40% approval rating. So they're pretty accurate.
Yeah. So again, a judge's job here, generally speaking, they are generally going to do a fine job. They're, it's not like watching Law and Order where you're, having these big outstanding arguments with the judge and those things. The judge's job is just stay out of the way. And again, you're not going to be able to really get what judge you want anyways.
No, it's absolutely not.
So, you're just going to roll the dice and you get who you get.
This ain't Al Capone. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So, Tim, thanks for the knowledge, man.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.